So exercise, anything that breaks you down, that's catabolic. You're breaking something down, whether it's muscle, tissue, etc. Here's your catabolic stimulus. Here's your anabolic response. Anabolic is building back up, healing, and recovering. So the goal is, here's your breakdown. The anabolic buildup will always just outpace the catabolic breakdown. That's the goal of exercise. And when you're chronically inflamed, when your adrenals have been stressed and you're more in this sympathetic type of state where either cortisol is chronically high or it has been depleted, both kind of are cut two sides of the same sword, if you will. When that anabolic doesn't quite outpace the catabolic, this is where recovery starts to dwindle, whether it's excessive soreness, whether it's more fatigue after a workout, whether it's more chronic joint pain, more energy, brain fog. The goal is that we set our body so we're slightly a bit more anabolic than the catabolic stress. That's the goal. And so when we run like adrenal cortisol rhythm tests, one of the big things we'll see for dysregulated cortisol is we'll typically see flatter and lower cortisol rhythm. So typically cortisol is light driven. It's a circadian rhythm, higher in the morning, and then it drops at night. And as cortisol drops at night, there's this inverse relationship between melatonin and cortisol. So melatonin comes up with darkness, cortisol goes down. And so this helps you kind of get into a tired state, want to go to sleep. It's powerful antioxidant, anti-cancer, helps you get to deeper phases of restoration and sleep. And so we have this healthy cortisol rhythm, and the more imbalanced our body becomes, the more catabolic we become, the flatter that cortisol can become. Now, acutely, you may see cortisol up really high. That's possible, and you're still in this kind of chronic breakdown state, but cortisol is breaking you down. It's also very anti-inflammatory. So this is why you can't get too many cortisone injections, right? Because eventually the doctor will tell you it'll start to break down tissue. So they may give you a couple, but then after a certain amount, they'll be like, hey, you're going to have to do something else because it's starting to break your tissues down. So same thing. So cortisol starts off high. Over time, it will start to kind of peter out and go flatter, and then you'll have flatter mood, flatter energy, flatter sleep. And then as we start to have cortisol rhythm issues, you may not make enough melatonin at night, and start to have less restoration, less sleep. So one of the first things we can do is just, make sure we reduce all the inflammation from food. Of course, make sure we have the building blocks of all of our connective tissue, right? A protein, amino acids, good healthy fatty acids that help form our cell membrane, and decreasing a lot of the inflammatory vectors from gluten, refined sugar, and processed grains, and omega-6 junky vegetable oils. That's kind of the foundation right there out of the gates on the food side. Of course, we can look internally at the gut. We can look internally at female hormones as well. A lot of women that have chronically low cortisol also have low progesterone, because progesterone is a building block to cortisol. So women that are chronically stressed, they'll lower their progesterone. And then, of course, guys that over time will start to have lower testosterone as well, which is very anabolic, helping with recovery and healing as well. So over time, these are things that we got to look for. Low testosterone in men, lower progesterone in women, obviously flatter and or lower cortisol. And then from there, we'll tend to see lower DHEA levels as well. And DHEA is a precursor building block that will go downstream to sex hormones for men as well as women. And it's a precursor to a lot of the sex hormone that may be coming from the ovaries. But as we become in the menopause and our ovarian reserve is depleted, that's DHEA will now be coming from the adrenals. So it's like we're now like running on a backup generator, so to speak, with the powers out in our home. The backup generator being our adrenals in menopause women. So we're looking at progesterone, we're looking at low testosterone, we're looking at cortisol, we're looking at, of course, DHEA, and then, of course, we're looking at inflammation in the food. So, of course, we're dialing in all the big 5 vectors that I just mentioned there. And then, of course, the next thing is you have to adjust exercise frequency, intensity, and duration.